Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Soccer Morning, Backio.com on the air. We are back. Yes, thank you very much for your patience. We are here. It's happening. Technical difficulties have been rectified. Actually, it was more about the weather, but hey, whatever. We're here. We're live. Janusz Mihalik is scheduled for this show. I'm not telling tales out of school if I mention what I was just told, that Janusz Mihalik's got a cable guy coming today, which we will try to work around. Yes, we will try to work around Janusz Mihalik and his cable guy. I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk to Janusz about the Champions League. I got a couple results here. We got a couple games today. We got games next week, obviously. We'll talk to Janusz maybe about MLS as well. A couple of weeks away from the start of the Major League Soccer season. It is imminent. You are ready for this. Maybe not. I'm not ready. Teams are still making moves. We will also take your phone calls on today's program as well. So, there you go. Let's start with the news. We'll set the stage for our chat with Mr. Janusz Mihalik by mentioning the Champions League results. PSG with a 2-1 win over Chelsea in Paris yesterday. Edinson Cavani comes off the bench to score the winner for the home side. Chelsea gets a crucial away goal, however, from Jean-Obi Mikel. Zlatan Ibrahimovic opened the scoring for the French side on a deflected free kick. I mean, he owned that thing with the celebration, but come on. We know why that happened. Obviously, for PSG, getting a lead going back to Stamford Bridge is important, but that away goal could be huge. Chelsea very much okay in this situation. In fact, Goose Hitting calling it 50-50 right now. Benfica takes a slim 1-0 lead over Zenit in the other Champions League match from yesterday, quarterfinals here. Games today, Ghent of Belgium. Is it Ghent? Yeah, Ghent of Belgium hosting Wolfsburg, and Roma hosting Real Madrid. Interesting press conference yesterday with Ronaldo being asked about his away form and then storming out of the press conference because that's what Cristiano Ronaldo likes to do. PSG's Ezekiel Lavezzi, speaking of the French giant, signs with Hebei China Fortune of the Chinese Super League. Yes, another player signed to the Chinese Super League. I don't have a number on the transfer here. Not sure it would be a very large number because Lavezzi's contract with PSG was set to end at the end of the season. He joins Gervinho at Hebei China Fortune. Hebei China's Fortune in the Chinese Super League. So, yeah, we need to get this pronunciation down, people, because these teams are going to be out there buying up some of your favorite players. Sporting Gijón hosts Barcelona today as the Catalan Giants make up their one game in hand on the rest of La Liga. Barcelona currently lead Atletico Madrid, by 3 points. They can extend that lead to 6 points with a win over Sporting Gijón, who they are naturally supposed to beat. Barcelona comes off a 6-1 win over Celta Vigo on the weekend. And, of course, the star of that particular show, in addition to the hat trick by Luis Suarez, was the way it happened on the assist on a penalty kick from Lionel Messi to Luis Suarez. Lots of people talking about Trevor Hayward. Was that bad sportsmanship on the part of Barcelona? Yes or no? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Just briefly. I like one-man poll here. That's what we do at Soccer Morning. Okay, maybe he's too busy setting things up. We'll get your take on this maybe later in the show. I'll take your phone calls. I thought it was fun, but I also thought it was kind of a jerk move. But hey, whatever. Suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter is now at the organization's headquarters. Was at the organization's headquarters yesterday, making his appeal of his 8-year ban handed down for his role in a payment to Michel Platini in 2011. The hearing lasted for 7 hours, 1 hour less than Platini's own hearing on Monday. FIFA would not comment on when the verdicts are expected in these two appeals. They will hold their presidential election on February 26th to replace Blatter, who has been on the job since 1999. Now, there are many candidates for this job. Gianni Infantino seems to have a lot of momentum at the moment. Of course, we know that there are several other candidates, including Sheikh Salman and Prince Ali. Whether or not this represents actual change in FIFA remains an open question. Doesn't seem to be that we're moving in a real reform direction. Interesting point here that I don't have in the news, but I'm going to throw in. CONCACAF, CONCACAF lawyers have told that group that if they don't get their house in order, if they don't institute real reforms, not this nonsense reform on paper but nothing changes type of stuff, if they don't institute real reform, they're in danger of being dissolved as a body. So we'll see if that actually comes to pass. There's a reform package up for a vote on February 26th for CONCACAF, and then they're supposed to hold their own presidential elections come May in Mexico City. All right. Wayne Rooney will miss Manchester United's round of 32 match with FC Midtjylland of Denmark on Thursday. Rooney did not travel with the team to Denmark. After losing to Sunderland on the weekend, head coach Louis van Gaal has admitted that the club's chances of making the Champions League places are bleak. That means that there's now added pressure on Manchester United to get the job done in the Europa League so they can get themselves into the Champions League next season. There is a path there. Whether or not Manchester United are capable of navigating it remains to be seen. All right, so we've got the Champions League, couple of games from yesterday that we can go over, certainly setting the stage for today's games, including Roma hosting Real Madrid, the biggest of the two. We will maybe talk about next week's matchups in the Champions League as well. I want to talk Arsenal. Does Arsenal have any shot at all at Barcelona, and how do they manage balancing a chance at the Premier League title, which they haven't won since 2003-04, against a Champions League tie against the biggest, best club in the world at the moment? Interesting stuff there. Janusz Mihalik will join us. You know him from many places. He's fantastic, and he'll be right there on the other side, provided his cable guy hasn't shown up. We'll figure that out. Soccer Morning, backheel.com. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
All right, we're back on Soccer Morning. We have on the phone one of my favorite guests, good friend of the show, Janusz Mihalik. You know him from ESPN, a guy who does radio, calls games, is out there on Twitter giving his wisdom on a regular basis. And he usually joins us to talk Champions League. We're going to do that here. We might range a little bit. Hey, Janusz, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. We're coming down to the this is crunch time in the Champions League. This is obviously with these matchups. Some of them are some of the the biggest matchups we've seen in the competition so far. But we got a couple of games yesterday. And certainly let's start with PSG and Chelsea. Obviously the biggest of the two that we saw yesterday. The French side holds serve at home, Giannis, and yet I think Chelsea feels pretty good going back to Stamford Bridge, down a goal with an away goal in their pocket.
Yeah, given the way the game turned out, I suppose. Look, I still think that PSG are scoring at Stamford Bridge, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they were a superior team. Let's not kid each other here. I think with Chelsea we were surprised because I think they've looked good considering how bad they've been. So perhaps we're giving a credit to a great team that's been so disappointing that we're willing to settle for just about anything, right? So I don't want to take anything away from Chelsea because they did look as good as I remember now for a while. But for what, 15, 20 minutes during the game? Other than that, it was PSG and only PSG on the pitch. I think early on it was just almost. How do I describe it? I mean, it was just so easy. It's like boys against men. It really was in the 20 minutes. But that's the way the game goes. And credit to Chelsea because they kind of settled down and, in fact, gained momentum and looked all right. They had their chances. Don't get me wrong. Diego Costa, that header. Listen, Courtois showing his class again for Chelsea, right? Not just in Premier League, but here as well. Even though I think that would have been offside, but the referee didn't see it, so. Bottom line for me is that PSG will score at Stamford Bridge, and some will say and pointed out to me, I think yesterday when I was talking about it, that the PSG has not scored in regulation there in 2 games or 180 minutes, whatever it was. That's fair play, but I think they will score. Now, is it possible for Chelsea to then win 3-1? Sure, it is. Mm-hmm. This is still mighty Chelsea, no matter what you say. So. Good, I think, for Chelsea. They are responding to hitting in many ways, Jason, but I always felt that PSG is one of those gems. It's a hidden one. It's in League 1.
Yeah.
Nobody pays attention to them, really, because we almost never watch it. You know me, Jason, right? I watch anything.
Yeah,
I watch football and beat soccer, you know what I mean? And I watch PSG, but I have to make an unbelievable effort to watch them because it's terrific.
That leads into the issue that a lot of people will present with PSG, and the reason that maybe certainly it's hindsight, but one of the things that people say about PSG and why they haven't done better in this competition is because they're not challenged in France. I know David Trezeguet has recently said that. Look at the lead they have in Ligue 1 right now. They have no real competitors in their domestic league, so when they go into Europe, they're not really ready to step up to that level.
It's one of those that you agree and disagree. I mean, would PSG be better if, week in and week out they had 25 points lead, but every game was 1-0. It was great competition or whatever, or somebody challenged them? Yes. But at the same time, they're a great team and competitions, they live for that, right? Those players know and change their attitude when it comes to a game like this. In fact, you know what I mean? So there's absolutely no reason to think that better competition wouldn't have made them better. But look at Manchester City, have a great competition. And, if you talk about Manchester City and PSG, Jason, they almost entered that wealthy market, that special team at the same time. Yeah. And Manchester City hasn't done all that much better than PSG. In fact, they've done worse. And they have great competition. You know what I mean? So,
it's true.
So it all depends. I just think it's such a tough competition, especially when it comes now to kind of one-offs, if you will. You know what I mean? Knockout stage. That I can see both sides really, because if you're thinking that if it was better, then PSG are winning every other year. Well, then to have a look at Manchester City. It takes time, but this is a great team that I think is a little bit of a lack away of perhaps winning it, because they're as good as any out there, with the exception of maybe Barcelona at their best.
Well, I mean,
other than that, PSG can win this.
It all comes down to draw, of course. I mean,
right.
Yeah, in this case, they have a lead now going back to Stamford Bridge. You're tipping them to score away from home in this tie. They are significant. I mean, I know Goose Hitting is saying 50-50, but PSG are favorites here, clearly, even with Chelsea having an away goal. But timely, Timely away goal for them, and as you said, limiting the damage, I guess, is probably all Chelsea really wanted to do. So it's kind of hard to know whether or not we're going to see a different Chelsea in the return leg.
Yeah, you can't knock Chelsea. I mean, we're just, we're dissecting this because that's our job, right? But normally, if you're a logical person and you're not biased, you say to Chelsea, okay, yeah, 2-1. We haven't been great, right? We're missing some players. Matic wasn't there. He would have been an option and a good option there because that midfield, when you looked at it, right, with Mikel and Fabregas against, the likes of Matuidi and Verratti, it was outplayed and was always going to be outplayed. So I think Matic could have played a big role. You're losing a leader like John Terry. I mean, that's unbelievable. Going in that alone, I thought it was going to be a massive problem because you look at Cahill, who hasn't played, and Ivanovic, who can play there. That's his position, and he did great. But they haven't played together. I can't imagine this season. I don't remember, maybe once or twice. But so I think they were at a disadvantage. They scored an away goal, and yes, I mean 50-50. I think that's exactly what I would say for the most part, if I'm honest. That's a great result for Chelsea coming home.
What is wrong with Eden Hazard?
Eden, to be honest, there were times yesterday that he looked like he wanted to play for PSG, right? I mean, we've seen these reports that if PSG came in, right, it was one of those. It'd be hard to say not to. So I thought his effort was much better. His substitution is not necessarily because he's played badly. I think it was just more of a tactical one. It just made sense in a way. But I think I've seen a little bit more of him. It's look, confidence is a funny thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with Eden Hazard. I think, if anything, the expectations were so high because of the season he had last year. And to be honest with you, I didn't see Eden Hazard having that sort of season last year.
Yeah.
So I think these things even themselves out. He's a very, very good player, but is he top player? That remains to be seen.
All right, so we've got PSG up 2-1 in the first leg at home. In the other game yesterday, Benfica with a late goal in added time to take a lead on Zenit St. Petersburg. Your thoughts here? I mean, obviously this was the lesser of the two, at least in terms of the attention given to it. But of course, we know Portuguese teams can sometimes surprise, and really no one should look past the Russian sides, except for the fact that a lot's being made of the break that they have to take.
Yeah, this is funny part because we're going to be talking about Gent, as well pretty soon, and even Wolfsburg to some degree. Is that the trouble is that we're often surprised when things happen, and it's hard to handicap that in a way because people don't pay attention to that. It's so Premier League centric, La Liga with couple clubs. You know what I mean? Yeah. When it comes to Champions League, that's what it is. We only talk about big clubs, but have a look at that Zenit lineup, for example. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. I mean, I could pick 3, 4, 5 players. I don't want to say on any team, but I mean, the Garais, and I know they've what I mean. They've been in big clubs and maybe didn't pan out, but Axel Witsel. I mean, you kidding me?
People know these players, definitely, Giannis. People know these guys. Witsel, as you said, Kokorin, Zhirkov, Hulk.
Danny. I mean, what a wonderful technical player Danny is. You know what I mean? Hulk. Juba. Of course, everybody's starting to pay attention to Juba. I mean. Yukov, he's played for Russia, one of the steadiest right backs that Lodigin, has had some howlers, but yesterday, he set a save on, I think it was Nico Gaitan. That was just about unbelievable, really. You know what I mean? So those are good players, no doubt about that. And you look at Benfica, I mean, again, Nico Gaitan, what a delivery on the goal. Nico Gaitan, Manchester United has talked about buying him for the last 4 or 5 years. I still don't know why they never did it. Jonas, of course, we've seen him in La Liga. He was absolutely unbelievable. What was he in Valencia? Even Mitroglou, you know what I mean? Known for Premier League, a little bit of a surprise because he shed some weight and finally started to play and work. So there are a lot of good players that we just don't pay attention. Julio Cesar, and go for Benfica. Look, and by the way, Renato Sanchez, pay attention to this 18-year-old. What a player. And I don't want to get too excited because remember William Carvalho from Sporting, everybody, Arsenal was going to buy him. And he's still a good player, big holding midfielder. But watch Renato Sanchez. What a player. I just watched Benfica with, against Porto over the weekend. That was a big loss for them. So saying that in a roundabout way, I hope I got where you wanted me to get, is that it's a big win because of such a late win. Criscito, criminal, really foul. Because the goal came from that, and now he was sent off in that game as well. For Zenit, look, they look good. They played well. Let's not forget the Russian league hasn't started, so this is the first significant game for them, and they'll be more than happy. They'll be very disappointed to lose it that late, but they'll be extremely happy. And I would look for Zenit to go through here.
That's interesting. All right, so Zenit St. Petersburg again down 1-0 against Benfica on that late goal by Jonas, but yeah, as you said, they're probably going to feel pretty good about going home just down that goal. All right, so let's look at today's game. Again, there's a marquee game and then a game that's going to fly under the radar a bit. Let's flip this around. Let's start with Ghent and Wolfsburg. The Belgian side, not necessarily the most favored side, sides in this competition, but always relatively capable, and Wolfsburg, certainly one of the second tier of the German teams, generally speaking, and yet here they stand with a chance to advance.
Yeah, I mean, look, Wolfsburg in this one, has to be considered favorites, although they've struggled, haven't they? And it's really, there's no huge explanation why, Kruse, maybe not the sort of player that they thought at the moment, although I think he's been very good. Vierinha has been absolutely unbelievable. Remember last year, Vierinha and Caligiuri, on the wings, they were absolutely outstanding. So, Ricardo Rodriguez at left back, I felt last year that any team out there would have been happy with him. What he does defensively in terms of going forward, set pieces, takes all the corners, all the free kicks, all the penalties, and usually puts them away. But they've struggled. In terms of Ghent, look, this is one team. You know me. I don't like to be stumped, but we just don't know it. I still, haven't seen them in the group stages. Don't know enough, and perhaps that's why they'll be more than happy with that. You know what I mean? Because there's always that little bit of an element that you're going to take that team for granted. Players and coaches say no, but the bottom line in this one, both sides were extremely happy, probably. Being drawn against each other because both sides will have a chance here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not quite a toss-up. You're going to give Wolfsburg the advantage, but because, as you said, we don't know much about Ghent. By the way, Ghent is in they're tied on 55 points at the top of the table in Belgium at the moment with Club Brugge. So as you said, maybe an unknown. Maybe Wolfsburg looks past them, or maybe maybe this is a very nice draw for Wolfsburg, and they can make it into the quarterfinals.
Look for Wolfsburg. Let's not forget Naldo is suspended, right? Mm-hmm. Giavaghi in the midfield, who's a very good player, he's injured. Diego Benaglio, the goalkeeper, outstanding. He is injured. And Bas Doss, remember, we sort of made fun of him last year because he was scoring left and right. But he's also, by the looks of it, unavailable. So, I mean, not only are Wolfsburg struggling, but maybe there's a reason why, because some key players are out. And you look at that, and look, the bottom line here for me is Hans has got to win this game 2-0. They got to have a clear advantage going to Wolfsburg, I think, because in the end, in that atmosphere, I think if Wolfsburg scores away here, Wolfsburg.
If you don't go back to Germany and into that cauldron with a significant lead that you can sit on, it's going to be very difficult for the Belgian side. All right, Roma and Real Madrid. Now, the lead up to this game about Real Madrid's struggles in Italy, and the question yesterday at the press conference to Ronaldo about his away form, in which he decided was his cue to leave. Zidane having to play defense in the press conference ahead of time. Janis, it doesn't seem like it's a good feeling around Real Madrid right now as they visit the Italian capital.
Yeah, they haven't been sensational. Let's put it that way. At their heights, I mean, they're wonderful, but there haven't been that many as of late. So I think they'll worry about, with the fact that Carvajal may have to play left back for Marcelo. I think Bale got injured at a moment where he was probably at his best, right? I mean, we were kind of asking questions. He's been up and down anyway, but at that moment he was flying. He was much better than Ronaldo in many ways. So you're going against Roma. Roma team that, has a bad history of losing big, right? And that's an issue. Spalletti, though, 4 games undefeated or won 4 straight coming in. I think in 2008 he's beaten Real Madrid, right? Spalletti with Roma. So you've mentioned the history of that. I don't believe in those stats, those historical stats.
No.
You know what I mean? There's some stats that are important. There's stats that, if you haven't beaten team in 30 years, one of those nonsenses for me.
Sure.
So I'm not
teams,
big into this, but Real Madrid, I think, in this one, for me, they have an excuse because of some of the players that are missing. They have an excuse to be cautious, I think, because we look at Real Madrid and it's like Barcelona, right? If they don't go to Rome and don't dominate the team, we look for faults. I don't think they need to do that. I think they need to go to Rome. They can relax. You know what I mean? I don't think there's a lot of pressure for them. I think they need to get something out of this game, even if they can't win it. And at home, Roma will just fold. I think. If you look at Spalletti or not, I think he's going to make them better. Let's not forget, by the way, that Spalletti has always been known for the attacking-minded approach. And although I think he's perhaps grown over the years, I think you don't lose those stripes. You know what I mean? I think at some stage he's gonna want to open up just a little bit, and I think that's going to be the downfall of Roma eventually in the second leg. So again, look at some of the results of recently. How many goals in the group stage they've been conceding? How Roma did get to this? Let's not forget, right? It was just an awful performance. So you really hang in your hopes on the fact that Spalletti has fixed all of that. He seems to fix it for Serie A. Has he done it for a club like Real Madrid? That's a big ask in such a short period of time.
Sure. Again, without this being Real Madrid, there is always something swirling around this club, some controversy, some question, some upset player or locker room problem. It's been the Ronaldo Gareth Bale dynamic and the money and obviously these leaks coming out these days. Janis, footballleaks.com or whatever, trying to be the WikiLeaks of football. The most recent development on that front is James Rodriguez had his contract leaked. Now, he scored a great goal on the weekend, but he's been up and down. There's been allegations that he's been overweight. I mean, what do you make of this? For a very talented player, they spent 80 million euros on him. He better deliver, and yet it seems as though everything is about undermining him.
Undermining him or Real Madrid? Look, that goes with territory, Jason, doesn't it?
It does.
You go such a big club. I did enjoy Ronaldo in the sense that he's brought this onto himself and onto the club. I can understand the frustration, but could he develop a little bit of sense of humor about these things? You know what I mean? He knows that this is going to be asked, and yes, people pointed out that there's only been like 4 games since November, away games that he hasn't scored really, so it's not that big a deal. And his pride or his ego, I'm not so sure why he needs to do that, but why give press a reason to talk about that? He's still Ronaldo, he's still a great player, and I thought it would have been perfect if he stumped the press in that press conference and just made light of this situation here. And James Rodriguez, I think, he took his eye off the ball. I think that's the real reason, because players like James expect to play, but this is Real Madrid, and there can be no expectations of picking yourself in the starting 11. So this is his opportunity, and this is the sort of games that make or break someone like James Rodriguez. Because let's be honest, one thing for sure, James Rodriguez is in no way a Galactico. I don't care what he's done in the last World Cup. I think it was wonderful. I think he's got to understand how lucky he is to be playing for a club like this. Because the bottom line for me is this. When Bale, Benzema, and Ronaldo are healthy, there's no place for James Rodriguez.
That's interesting. Based on his performances on the club level before joining Real Madrid, you wouldn't put him in that category, or just a matter of talent?
No, I wouldn't put him in the category of a Galactico yet. He hasn't earned it. You know what I mean? In that front three, he can maybe in that midfield over Isco, but you can't tell me that there's such a big difference between Rodriguez and Isco. See, for me, Rodriguez and Isco is, they're wonderful players, but they're that kind of secondary class, if you will. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
James Rodriguez wants to be like Barcelona front three and like Real Madrid's front three, but I don't think he is. I really don't think he is just yet. And even if it's psychologically, he's shown that he's a player that came in and moaned just a little bit. You know what I mean? Yes, he's gained weight. He's playing now. He's delivering. But again, he has to understand that there's an unbelievable competition there. I mean, we think Hesse and Isco and you're talking about players that could claim that as well, right?
Yeah.
Look at Chicharito when he went over there, right? I mean, would I be out of line to say that James Rodriguez is like Chicharito? There's not a huge difference between those two.
Okay.
And we know that Chicharito, for better or worse, had to find his level. And I'm not saying that by Leverkusen is level, but at Manchester United, he's done his job off the bench. He wanted more.
Yeah.
He didn't get more. And James Rodriguez, for me, is that sort of player.
Okay.
Right now, if I'm him, I don't say boo. I work as hard as I possibly can to show that he can, dislodge one of those players at Real Madrid. Because, never mind what's here right now, right? James Rodriguez got to understand that within 6 months or a year, there's going to be more Galacticos coming in. There's going to be the best of the best wanting to come in. There may be Lewandowski coming in, although not direct competition for him, but you have to find a place for him. So I think he needs time before we go, gaga over him.
It's obviously a fascinating dynamic because you mentioned the World Cup. I mean, clearly his stock was, rocketing up because of his World Cup performance, and the money that Real Madrid paid for him puts him in that upper echelon of 1% of the world's players, which means expectations, which means a presumption of quality that you're suggesting that maybe he can't meet. So this is an overvaluing of a player, which really isn't necessarily James Rodriguez's fault, and that's
no.
that's sort of the problem for him.
But that's what Real Madrid do, right? I mean, they'll find anybody. To cut their losses, they'll do it. Look, Real Madrid prints money, right? No bank in Spain or in Madrid are going to turn them down, right? They are the richest club in the world.
Yeah.
For them to dismiss a player because it didn't pan out. And by the way, I'm not saying that he won't, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think we need to understand the dynamic of what constitutes for Real Madrid a legend, what constitutes a player that the 80,000 there will fight for in order to be on the pitch at all times, right? Look at so I'm not sure that the Real Madrid faithful are going to go way out of their way to hammer Zidane or Perez if James Rodriguez is not starting. And that's what you need to do,
sure.
right? If you have the crowd behind, if they think of you as a Galactico, regardless if you're playing incredibly or if you're an incredible player, this is where you have to win. You have to win the love of public opinion at the Bernabeu. And in my opinion, James is not at that level just yet. You know what I mean? When he gets to that, that's when you will get the benefit of the doubt. Right now, he doesn't get benefit of the doubt. He's young, he's still developing, he's got tons of talent, and he has to show that consistently if he's in the starting 11 or off the bench. So this is a big, big, big game, which, by the way, he may answer the call, but it's a big game because he's going to get that opportunity on the biggest of stages.
Again, I'm fascinated by Real Madrid. They're still favorites in this tie against Roma by a significant margin, I think, and at the same time, they're watching the league slip away. Barcelona is completely unstoppable at this point, Janis. To get number 11 would be great for them, but I guess, I guess I'm questioning focus. I'm questioning Zidane's ability to navigate with this being his first job at this level and certainly taking on the biggest club in the world. I don't know how to ask a question out of this, but what kind of season is this for Real Madrid? Again, considering that while they're not that far back, you can only imagine that the league is completely gone with Barcelona the way that they're playing.
Well, yeah, but winning Champions League changes that, right?
Sure, yes, right.
Because the press and everybody's going to say, "Hey, we are the best club in Europe." You know what I mean? Even though it's easy to say, "Well, you're not even the best in the league." You know what I mean? But that trumps it all. It's as simple as that. The league is gone. There's nothing Zidane could have done. And again, not for drama here from me, but really, the league was gone the moment they lost at home to Barcelona 4-0. That's sometimes as simple as that, right? Barcelona holds advantage over Atletico Madrid. They've beaten them twice. They've beaten, there's no way Real Madrid goes to Barcelona and, wins bigger than 4-0. And that's what they will have to do, because it's going to be tight. So that's done. And ultimately, it's always between Real Madrid and Barcelona who gets one over whom. But these days, I think if Barcelona wins La Liga, but Real Madrid wins Champions League, Real Madrid will be more than happy with that. You know what I mean? They think, and probably in a way, rightfully so, that it's a great season for them. And we can argue, whatever, how many games in the league, and it's often harder to do that than win Champions League because of lack of the draw, this, that, or the other. But Champions League is Champions League. Real Madrid, has won more than anybody else, and if they were to do it here, they wouldn't be crying over that, right? So I think they would look at that as a great season.
Sure. All right. So, Giannis, there's a chance that we might be able to talk to you next week, but I'm guessing there's also a chance we won't be able to grab you next week. And there are some, obviously some fascinating matchups coming up there as well. And I don't have time to dive into them as deep as we have with this week's games, but I do want to talk about Arsenal and Barcelona only because where Arsenal sits, I mean, the league is there for the taking in a certain regard. I know Leicester has a relatively soft schedule, but it's Leicester, and you have to imagine that Arsenal can smell that title, but they also have, they're in the Champions League. You don't give up on the Champions League. How does Arsene Wenger manage? Because they also have the FA Cup. They've got Hull City coming up this weekend. How do they manage all of these things, and how do you imagine that Wenger should prioritize?
No prioritizing here. You can't prioritize over Barcelona, or you're going to get hammered.
Right.
Hammered. You may anyway, but psychological impact of a bad loss to Barcelona in both legs may carry over to the league. So you can. I mean, he's getting some players that are a little bit healthier. You're in the business end of the season. And every team would be more than happy to be in the situation that Arsenal are in. Right now, you don't care. You play the strongest lineup possible in every game. That's the bottom line. You play your best starting 11 for the rest of the season. That's a simple. Yeah, of course. The FA Cup may be won, but even that. So look. I mean, Arsenal loses to this Barcelona. 8, 9 out of 10 times, and in a one-off you give them a chance. In two legs you just don't. But that doesn't mean that you don't try, because it's always possible. But as you said, I mean, this Barcelona at their best is Arsenal aren't good enough to beat this Barcelona.
All right, last thing here before I rush you out, Giannis. I know your cable guy's going to show up any second and win this. Juve Bayern. There's some other game again. PSV Eindhoven against Atleti. Dynamo Kiev against Man City. Those are both next week. But the big one is outside of Arsenal, Barcelona is Juve and Bayern. Does Juve have a shot? And then from the Bayern perspective, obviously Pep is a lame duck manager, having already announced he's going to Man City. Is it even? I mean, is he the greatest manager of all time if he manages to win a Champions League with a club that knows he's leaving, and I imagine a group of players who can't be entirely happy about the situation?
Yeah, I mean, that would be something, right? That's what he was brought in for. But look, I mean, you're fully capable. I mean, the way they're going right now and the way Bayern are going, I mean, you have to say that Juve are favorites. I mean, I don't see how you don't say that. With the injuries that they've had in the back, Bayern are Bayern. They have plenty going forward. But in terms of balance and the run, 15 games in Serie A, and you look at what Allegri can do with this team, how they can play in different formation within the game, the depth they have, I really, at this moment, would struggle to make Bayern favorites. I think you make them because they're Bayern. You know what I mean? But then again, I mean, Juve are Juve. These are two giants of the game. And 2 years ago, we wouldn't have been saying the same thing. But Juve are back to where they belong, perhaps, and where they always have been, right, as one of the giants of football. And they've proven it on the pitch. They have all the momentum. They're much, they have some problems, but they're healthier than Bayern Munich. So, they have more than a chance, that's for sure.
Giannis Mahalik, find him on ESPN and other places, joining us on Soccer Morning, talking Champions League. I think that's enough of your time that we'll take up, Giannis. Again, you got your cable guy show. We know how that is. I mean, you sit on pins and needles. You never know when the guy's going to show up.
Hey, I mean, he just knew that, this is a tradition. You and I on Champions League, I'm there next week if you want me to. And
there you go.
Just waited. But, I'm getting that nice new TV so I can watch games when I'm not at ESPN.
There you go. You got
priorities, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I was almost tempted to cancel, as you know. I was like, listen, if he shows up, I don't know. But it's worked out great.
Hey, the best part about all of this is, if I'm not mistaken, you can claim this on your taxes, right? Because this
I do. I mean, funny that you catch that, because it did play a big role in terms of which TV I was choosing. You know what I mean? I was looking. I can do that. I suppose. I mean, I do have them, but my home office has been redone because of a bit of a flood I had last year.
Oh no!
So now that gave me an opportunity to do this.
Go. Well, silver linings. Giannis Mahalik joining us on Soccer Buddy. Thank you so much, Giannis. Hopefully, we will have a chance to talk next week about the Champions League matches coming up then.
Sounds great, Jason.
All right, there goes Giannis. Let's take a break. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll talk to you about this and every other thing out there in the soccer world. It's Soccer Morning, and it's on backheel.com.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
We are back on Soccer Morning. It is, what's today, Wednesday? I'm losing track of my days. Programming notes. And yes, I realized that we were not on the air yesterday due to technical issues, and I apologize for that. It's going to be a 3-show week because we're not on the air Friday either. I am out of town on Friday. Quick little jaunt. out of town, and I will be back on Monday. So just there you go. If you're looking for the show on Friday, my apologies in advance. It's not going to be there. But we will be here tomorrow. 646-832-3909 is your phone number. We'll talk Champions League. We'll talk MLS player movement, preparations for the season. We can talk, what else do I got? I don't know. Aaron's got Champions League. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a great shakeout in the next really 2-3 weeks in Champions. I mean, I think you're going to see. I mean, I don't see how Arsenal has any chance unless they just literally sit back and hope for, a respectable 0-0, which I think would be a win. And I think Wenger is really kind of on the line here finally. I mean, it's just, for so many years, it's just a non-production. I mean, he's, like I said, he's the Marvin Lewis of the Premier League.
Well, yeah, but Marvin Lewis doesn't have a Super Bowl. Marvin Lewis didn't put together one of the most unstoppable teams the Premier League has ever seen. I mean, let's be somewhat fair to Arsene Wenger.
Fair, but I mean, at what point isn't that kind of the front end of your career?
You know what?
Decade plus later.
Arsene Wenger is Mike Shanahan.
That's fair. That's probably even better.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think the scale of being exposed next week. I mean, the role that Barcelona's on right now is just it's breathtaking, actually, and I just don't see, unless these guys can get thrown in jail for tax evasion, which is a decent shot here. It sounds like it between Neymar and Messi, and it's shocking to me the club lets these guys just kind of money launder their money all over the world. Put the whole thing at risk. Basically,
what can the club do? What can the club do, though, Aaron? I mean, I don't know the ins and outs, the legal details of everything that's coming down on Messi and Neymar's head, but I know that shell companies overseas sale of image rights through parties that avoid Spanish taxes. I understand some of that, but what can the club do, really?
I mean, at the end of the day, the club can put provisions in, that basically say you have to fulfill X, Y, and Z legal obligations, or else, we can do whatever we want with your contract. They can put something punitive in there, which I'm sure eventually is going to happen. I mean, it's like the way that kind of morality clauses are in NFL and NBA contracts and things like that. But,
yeah. Okay.
I mean, this is just, at the end of the day, you finally get caught with something. But, I mean, the fact that the Brazilian government, just took Neymar's jet, which I'm kind of surprised, like, that he has an extra jet in Brazil hanging out,
Wait, you're surprised by that? I'd be very disappointed if Neymar didn't have a jet in Barcelona and a jet in Rio and a yacht in 3 different places. Come on.
And then he'll be part of an article when he's 50 that he's completely broke. It's kind of sad. But actually one other thing I wanted to throw out to everyone is, I don't know if they've the U.S. women team is kind of going through its new generation, but Crystal Dunn kind of got hosed a little, in the World Cup. It looks to be a really explosive player. I mean, for the U.S., part of this new generation, and and being African American, which has been a sore spot in reality for our U.S. team.
There are some, I haven't dug into it, partly because I don't want to speak unfairly about some of the figures involved, and really I need insight from people who cover that team on a regular basis. I mean, obviously we have several good sources, but it's not. There is certainly a feeling in some circles that the U.S. women's national team is intentionally a little white, or a lot white, and there's also been you mentioned Crystal Dunn. There's also been allegations from from Mexican American players that maybe they've been pushed to go play for Mexico because essentially the United States women's national team said there's no place for you here.
Absolutely. No, and that's not something that is small. I mean, my daughters play all the way up through, U20s now, and I mean, it's the whitest thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's just.
Well, we're also talking about
evil way. I just mean that in like this can't be the only girls /
again,
women that
we're coming
play soccer in America.
Aaron, we're coming to an issue of access, and that comes, access and outreach and the wall that gets put up between the suburban pay-to-play soccer model and everybody else. And even if the sport is culturally important to you, if you come from a Latino background, Central American, Mexican, you're going to play regardless. You're just not going to play in places where scouts can see you and college coaches can see you, and that's a problem. If you are, there's a lot of people in this country who either could afford to put their kids in soccer or have access to certain levels of soccer who choose not to because there's not a single kid in those teams that look like their kid, and that's a problem.
Exactly.
We shouldn't be trying to keep whatever. We should, obviously all doors should be open. That goes without saying. It's just a matter of how do we get there. In fact, I think it was last year. Trevor may be able to remind me. I had wanted to do a capsule on this show, and we failed to do it, and it's my fault for the most part. But I came across a YouTube video or a Vimeo piece. It was a kind of a short. It was almost like a news report sort of format. Maybe it was even a class project for somebody down in Florida, and it was about
down in Florida. It's really good. It's very good.
It was about
it
was about race and soccer, and I want to explore those things. But again, and it's not an excuse, but being a middle class white guy, it's hard for me to speak on that topic with any real authority. So it requires bringing in people who know those issues better than I do.
And I mean, I've coached and refed in the Jersey area, and Jersey's kind of one of the 5 or 6 powerhouse states in women's and girls soccer. But you go down to any of the big showcase tournaments in the region, and I mean, it's just some of it is cultural and access. I mean, some of it's cultural, some of it's access.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, I think, is fundamentally outreach. And I'll tell you, especially like you said earlier, what's going on with some of the Mexican players. I mean, you look at the Mexican national team; they all play U.S. university colleges. They all play, many of them, on the same teams of the U.S. counterparts. Most of them are born here, almost all of them, actually, two-thirds of them. So it's just, there's just something so fundamentally weird there. I mean, I'll be honest, it feels very 1940s baseball.
Yeah.
And no one wants to talk about it that way, but it really does. And and I have nothing against all the great work that those players have done, and they're monsters, and they're just absolutely dominant. But I just don't think it's the direction that anything that's American should be going in, fundamentally. But this, I'll tell you, but Crystal Dunn is not gonna let that happen.
Sure.
I mean, she's a monster, and you could just see it out there. I mean, she has that Ibra thing where you just sit there and like, wow, okay, you can just physically go through people at will, and so it's going to be very interesting to see because she's young and strong, and when she gains a voice, what that voice is going to be.
Yeah.
And because I do think there's that moment where there's a breakthrough in American, soccer that way, and I think Klinsman's trying to do that on the men's side. It's not as, I think, charged on the men's side because we just had so many more men from diverse backgrounds, but I think on the women's side, it's way more charged.
Yeah. I don't. Well, charged. In what way do you mean charged necessarily, Aaron? Because I see what you're saying. The men's that's sort of the odd thing, though, right? The men's team has always been a better cross section of American society. Now, maybe that's because maybe that's because the relative quality of our players on the men's side is so far behind everybody else. There literally cannot be any choosiness. There literally cannot be. You cannot justify passing anybody up. Whereas the women's side, certainly the U.S. women have been the best team in the world for a number of years, and even now retain that position, and the talent pool is pretty deep. Bo, by the way, Bo Duro's on Twitter, covers women's soccer, covers NWSL, has pointing out that not that long ago Crystal Dunn was the defender, so it was easier to justify her omission from the World Cup team because going out and scoring a bunch of goals wasn't a thing people expected her to do.
Sort of, but I mean, if you watched her play in the NWSL last year, or saw her stats, or against basically the best women out there. I mean, it was just one of those things that it was to scratch your head, and then there's an optics reality, right? I mean, you're carrying a nice roster here, and I understand you're carrying legacy players, and that's great too. But it's one of those impacts that matters. Because she's going to be there anyways in the next 4 years. So that's why you carry a player, at the lower level of your roster, and it's not really about her. It's just more about the whole process. And I think it'd be great if you did a show on that, because I think there's just so much.
Yeah.
When I say charged, it's charged because of the suburbs that we live in, and the environment that is, and some of the breeding ground that produces behaviorally.
Yeah. You mentioned baseball, Aaron. Just real quick, you mentioned baseball, and while there are certainly parallels, we're talking about professional, and you said 1940s. The thing that's fascinating to me about baseball, and this is sort of the opposite of soccer, is that baseball had diversity, and maybe not in the professional game. There was certainly a lot of there were problems there in the way the professional game was run, and you didn't allow access to the highest levels. But there were obviously a lot of African American players of amazing quality in the United States, going up until the 1980s and then into the 90s. That community completely gave up on baseball, and soccer has a chance to go in reverse here and actually build up and say, this is a sport for everybody. We're not doing this. We're not making the same mistakes that all these other sports made and then had to rectify. And you watch how hard baseball is trying to reclaim some of the attention of Black Americans who, again, have turned their back on that sport because it became clear that access and opportunity weren't there for them. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on this. We could do this all day. It's not everybody's favorite topic, obviously.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. But it's great to just have a forum that can even bring up some of these topics like this. I would say one last thing about the Prem this weekend. You had such a huge shakeout where these teams. I thought Leicester would probably deliver, but they didn't. I mean, in giving up the 2 goals, I didn't think. I was kind of shocked about that, and just also Man City kind of somewhat falling apart again. This is going to be just such a chug to the finish line.
Yeah, right.
Which is I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be exciting as hell.
Don't
but at
you?
Some level, it starts to feel like the NFC East.
Well, I was going to say, Aaron, don't you feel as though the English are having a very hard time processing this particular season, whereas the Americans who watch that league are like, yes, this is exactly what we want to see, and we're maybe not even what we want to see, but we're more accustomed to it, so we're able to pull the entertainment out of it a little bit more. I feel as though
absolutely
some of the English observers are saying to themselves, nobody wants to win it, and all these teams are mediocre. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, this is fantastic.
Exactly, especially when you look at kind of the big separations, with Bayern and PSG and maybe not Barca, but the top 3 teams in Spain. When you look at the other leagues, and you just see kind of, except for Italy, you just don't see a lot of competition. It's kind of exciting about how hungry these teams are and then how much they're willing to fight. But it also has an NFC East quality to it, right? I mean, do we think any of these 4 teams next year are going to, punch into the semifinals of the champions? I mean, it's just, they're if anything, they're falling behind.
And I am fascinated by that, sort of the duality of the Premier League right now and the development of the Premier League. And as the new television contract kicks in and continues to fundamentally change the ability of these teams, the middle class teams of England, to compete at the highest level of the transfer market, it's going to make the Premier League more interesting and more entertaining. And I don't think we're going to have a Leicester every year, Aaron, but it may make things more entertaining and more interesting in that league year to year, but significantly impact the ability of the best teams to go and win the Champions League. And that's the trade-off.
Well, there's no incentive, because if I'm making a quarter, because let's be honest, this contract's just the beginning of the next contract. So, we're talking about if you're getting $250 million in your league for 38 matches, what's your incentive? I mean, to be honest, it's actually dangerous to try to do this European thing. And forget Juventus getting their $100 million kind of derivative contract on success. That's not normal. But, whatever, 10 to 50 million if you're lucky to go, Europe wide. I mean, it's almost like, there's just no incentive to do that, except for kind of, we love the game, the beauty, and all the rah-rah stuff. And I would say, if anything, the incentive is actually more in these lesser clubs, because the branded clubs already kind of have their global brands, Arsenal or United, or, just the ones that everyone knows. And I would say even City, where you go around the world and you'll see people wearing those jerseys. It's the lesser clubs that, I think in some ways can make a harder push, have a greater incentive to try to do something like a Tottenham, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Tottenham hasn't really broken through globally as a there's not the whole Spurs thing everywhere.
No.
Be honest, if they kept Bale, there probably would be, but that's a different story. I mean, they might not.
Yeah,
be
but they
could
could ride the rocket ship that is Harry Kane to that level, I imagine.
And I would say, if they make, because clearly the model is building tridents. Right? From a business standpoint and from a soccer standpoint too. But if you're owning one of these clubs that's competitive, you want a trident. It's sexy. It looks good. It's brandable. You punch goals in like galore. Obviously, you're trading off things to do that, but in terms of your style, and you're making a bet, basically. It's like you turn into the New Orleans Saints, throw ball. But if you're trying to make money at it, it's kind of a no-brainer. And if you look at these English teams, I think all of them are going to build tridents, and that's going to pump up their brand and how kind of competitive that league is. I still don't think it makes much of a dent in Europe. I just don't. And if the dent is they get to the quarterfinals, like Chelsea stumbles to the quarterfinals. Even if they somehow through all the accidents in the world get through PSG, which it can happen. What do you think would happen in the next round? It would be a historic slaughter. A team would put them out of their misery just on principle alone. Like, what are you doing here?
Right.
Like, PSG is supposed to be here, and we're supposed to have a competitive match.
Yeah.
And whether it was Bayern or Barca or Real, how would that go down? It's Chelsea's better off just going away right now than losing 6-0 and 5-0. Or something like that, getting half the team fired. So it's at the end of the day, and think about it, Chelsea's it right now. Can you imagine that? Like a wounded animal Chelsea that's, mid-table, chaos, half the team is gone, player of the year is, disappeared, everyone's running for the exits, and that's the only kind of, story. And if you notice, no one in the English media even wants to cover this because it just makes the whole league look so weak right now
Yeah.
when it comes to European competition.
Yeah, Aaron, I'm going to run. I appreciate the call.
Yes.
Good stuff as always. I really do appreciate it. And then we'll probably talk to you soon, man. All right, goes Aaron in Jersey. Good stuff from him. As always, 646-832-3909 is the phone number if you want to jump in here. One thing I didn't get to Aaron, I didn't get to present to Aaron, which I thought about, and something I forgot to ask Giannis Mahalik about, was the Barcelona penalty from the weekend. I haven't had a chance to address it in this forum. The decision by Lionel Messi to set up Luis Suarez, by the way, Neymar claiming that actually was for him, but that Suarez had seen this drill in training and decided to get on the ball himself and put it home. Now, not illegal. My first instinct was illegal. Now, it's not, and obviously it's not. I guess the reason I thought it was is because I'd never seen it before. The question that's bouncing around is whether or not it's unsportsmanlike. That's a word. Unsportsmanlike. Whether or not it is not cheating, but sort of out of the bounds of respectable play. Was it insulting to Celta Vigo for Barcelona, for Lionel Messi to set up Luis Suarez with an assist on a penalty? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, if only because, look, if you're Celta Vigo, you either have to know the rule, know that this, something like this is possible, and try to prevent it. I mean, ultimately, it's on Celta Vigo to prevent this from happening. That's where the onus lies. I don't think the onus lies on the team scoring the goal. The team scoring the goal should do so by any means necessary within the rules, and that's within the rules. I know in the aftermath of that penalty, lots of people sort of making light of others calling it showboating by actually sharing GIFs and clips of people showboating. And I know that there are in across various sports this sort of unwritten rule book. You don't, look, you're up 4-0 in a game. You don't sombrero somebody. You don't nutmeg them on purpose to make them look stupid. You don't heap abuse on a team that's already abused, it's already down. But again, if you don't like it, stop the other team from doing it. I'm not even in the camp that this is entertainment and Barcelona is meant to entertain and sports are entertaining and who cares as long as it's that's not even my position. I mean, yeah, you want the team, you want your sports to be entertaining, you want your team to play entertaining soccer, but really it's all about whether or not that other team has the opportunity to stop you. And if they have the opportunity to stop you, if they are not being illegally restrained from stopping you, the onus is on them. If the score was 10-0, I would say, damn, Celta Vigo, you didn't try hard enough, or you didn't stop them. That's on you. It's not Barcelona's fault that that Celta Vigo can't stop them. Barcelona should be trying to score. It's actually less respectful for Barcelona to stop trying to score. Yeah, Messi could have slotted that thing home himself. He could have done that. Could have gotten that goal himself. He already had one on the day. It would have been fine. But again, he's playing within the rules. And if Celta Vigo's not prepared to stop it, then that's on them. All right. Looks like phone calls have dried up. We will take our leave here on a Wednesday. Thank you very much to Giannis Mahalik. Brilliant stuff from Giannis. As always, love talking to that guy. Nobody watches more soccer, talks about more soccer, enjoys more soccer, analyzes more soccer adeptly than Giannis Mahalik. Hopefully we'll have him back for next week's Champions League matchups. We'll talk CONCACAF Champions League soon, Robert, I promise. Soccer Morning, Backfield.com. Follow us on Twitter. I'll see you tomorrow.